The base is dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here. It's a U.S. men's national team match day in the CONCACAF Nations League. We'll be getting into all aspects of U.S. and Canada tonight. An important match if the U.S. wants to survive the CONCACAF Nations League group stage. They must win against Canada in Orlando tonight. Not a huge crowd expected. Advanced ticket sales were not great, and kind of mirrors the general vibe around this team at the moment. Doesn't take away from how big tonight is, and we'll get into all of the importance of it this morning. Friday flashback question of the day. What is your favorite U.S. men's national team performance that you are hoping they can emulate tonight? Is it a gritty performance? Is it a world-class performance? Is it a performance with a special type of night for an individual? Share your favorite U.S. men's national team performance that you hope can inspire the team tonight in Orlando. I'm Jason Longshore, John Nelson alongside. And John, where do you want to start?
Wow. We could always start looking at the match in and of itself. I know that yesterday when you were talking, you didn't know kind of what the team was going to look like, but we get into the lead up of all of this because I have a question for you when we get through when we get into the starting 11s.
Why don't we just start with the question?
Okay. Well, obviously no Michael Bradley. So I was going to ask, not knowing what the starting 11 is going to look like, but I was going to ask the individuals who could be in that space that Michael Bradley normally occupies. I was going to ask, of those individuals, how do they compare and how do they contrast to what Bradley does on the pitch?
Well, it's Alfredo Morales, by all accounts, who's going to start as the 6. Alfredo Morales is a player who has kind of been in and out of the program, to be honest. He made his debut a while back, cap-tied in 2015 in the Gold Cup, made his debut in a friendly in 2013 against Canada, but then he really hasn't seen too much action. He's got 14 caps overall. He's played his whole career in Germany. He was born in Berlin. Right now with Fortuna Dusseldorf. He's a scrappier player, I think, than a Michael Bradley. I don't think he's quite as strong in possession, but he's definitely a little more physical, a little more of a scrappy holding midfielder, and that's honestly something this team needs right now. And it's been Morales of all the people, which has been a bit of a surprise, to be talking about the need for that mentality and that fight and that, we're going to kill them kind of vibe. Not literally, but you know what I mean. He's 29 years old. He's an older player than a lot of the players in this group, but he hasn't been a fixture with this team. So it's a little surprising that it's on Morales, who is not a starter in, I think, any normal setup for this team, and he hasn't been there for a long time. It's surprising that it's Morales who is talking the most in the build-up to this. I mean, it's good that somebody is, but wouldn't have expected it would have been him. So you've got to make up some of the on-the-ball side that you're going to lose with Bradley out. I'm wondering what the pairing is in the midfield. You've got a few different options. You have Jackson Yueill, who had a really good season with San Jose, playing in a deeper role. You've got Christian Roldan, who's played a good bit for Greg Berhalter, but he's coming off of MLS Cup on Sunday. Where's his fitness at? Where's his head at after coming off a championship like that? Where's his focus? You would think he's going to be fired up, but is he sharp after playing in that match on Sunday? It's a tough decision. Sebastian Lletget is another possibility in there. I think Weston McKennie will be one of the central midfielders. And this is all assuming that Greg Berhalter sticks with some version of a 4-3-3. So 3 central midfielders. Morales will be 1. McKennie will be 1. How do you pair the third one? Is it going to be somebody who sits deeper, like a Roldan, like maybe a Yule, who earlier in his career was a little more forward, but now he's dropped deeper in San Jose? So could you pair him with Morales? Is it Leggett because of his experience, his craftiness? Does he sit in front of McKennie and Morales? McKennie's a little bit of a wild card here, and McKennie has been one who has shown a lot of emotion in his national team appearances, at times a little out of control, and that is a good thing in a lot of ways because you've needed that spark, but can he control it? Can he measure it tonight? And what's his role going to be? And this has maybe been one of the hardest things for Weston McKennie, is he's had to play a variety of roles during his career so far, not just with the national team, but at the club level. Where is he best positioned? Is it, as a central midfielder, is it sitting deeper? Is it pushing forward? Is it being a box-to-box? He's played in the back line some at the club level as well. How is he going to get used tonight? And that's the one that I don't really know what the answer is going to be. We know Morales will sit, but does McKennie sit with him and you play a Leggett in front as more of a playmaker? Do you sit somebody with Morales and have McKennie bomb forward and be more of a central attacking midfielder? I don't know. And that's what makes this so hard for Greg Berhalter, and I think for experts looking at this, is without Bradley, without Pulisic, you've got to find two different things here. You've got to find somebody to be the metronome of your possession play, which you're not going to go away from tonight. But you've also got to find somebody to create opportunities. You've got to find two different people here in these spots, and you don't really have a like for either one. So what does it look like? I don't know. My guess, in a game like this, I would probably want to go with more experience, and that might hurt Jackson Yule's chances. I would probably tend to go with Morales, McKennie, and Leggett. And Leggett and McKennie can kind of trade off taking steps forward. They're going to have to be in sync and make sure that Morales has some help when he needs it. But I think that gives you the most stability in the middle of the park in a game like this that is a must-win.
And that lent itself to my follow-up question, where Greg Berhalter admitted in the pre-match presser that there is no like for Pulisic. Then seeing what you're seeing kind of sort of in the midfield, not really knowing how things are going to be addressed, what are things up top? What's that next grouping looking like, and how are you envisioning things there in the attack?
Well, with no Josie Altidore either, it's got to be Josh Sargent up top as the 9, and then who's out wide. And I think when you go back to Pulisic, there's still a question about where his best position is. I think it's out wide. I'd love to see him centrally as a number 10 for the U.S. men's national team. I don't think he looks as comfortable there. He's looked his best for Chelsea out wide. He's probably going to play more out wide. I'd say count on him out wide with the national team. Keep it simple for him right now. Okay. So if you're going to play 3 central midfielders, and if it's me writing the lineup sheet, it's Morales, it's McKennie, it's Leggett. So then Sargent up top as the number 9, and you've got to come up with the options on either side. I think Jordan Morris is really important to get in this, and you're going to have to, of course, make the decision on where he's at, just like with World On. Where is Jordan Morris in terms of fitness? Where is Jordan Morris in terms of, his focus after winning a championship? I think he becomes the X factor here, more so than, Pulisic is that when he is on the field. I don't know if you have another one. Morris is that unpredictable element, completely different than Christian Pulisic, but still can throw teams off and can cause some problems. And having him out wide gives you the opportunity that where if you're under pressure, in duress, you have to play long. you can play long, not just down the middle to Sargent, but you can play long to Morris and let him fight for it with his size and strength and power. So Morris would be on one side for me, and then your question is down to, is it Tyler Boyd? Is he going to be your guy on the other side? He's had some opportunities. He hasn't really taken advantage of all of them, and that's been a little frustrating when you look at what Tyler Boyd, I think, can give you. Is this the night that he breaks out? You'd have to hope so. Other options, you've got Paul Arriola, who you know is going to give you a hard-working shift. You know Paul Arriola is going to stretch the opposition. You know he's going to track back and defend. You know he's going to put the work in. Is the quality going to be there? And that's been the question at times for Arriola, especially in the final third. But this might be a game where that work rate trumps anything else. And let's go to the back line too, because that's why I'm leaning towards Arriola on the left side. Because the back line, I think, will be Reggie Cannon on the right and Serginho Dest on the left. Dest is great going forward. Dest defensively still has some issues. And you saw Mexico attack him in the friendly. You've seen other teams attack him when he has been as an outside back. He's going to be on the left side, which is not his natural side. You don't want to take away from him going forward, but you need somebody over there who will cover for him if needed. Paul Arriola will do that. We've seen Paul Arriola with DC United play as an outside back, play as a wing back from time to time. That's why Arriola would get the start for me, to give you extra cover on that side for Dest, to let Dest, the young player, feel a little more comfortable doing what he does best, which is getting forward and creating havoc going forward. So, working all the way through, I would go with Brad Gazan in goal tonight. I'd go with Yedlin on the right side. Cannon could get the start too. I think Yedlin coming off of a goal, I would go with him. Again, experience, but man, he had a bad night in Canada last time around. I'm going to lean to Yedlin. Okay, then Brooks and Long as my center backs. I think that's pretty well established right now. I'll go Dest on the left side. Midfield would be the group we talked about: Morales, McKennie, Leggett, and then up top, Sargent as the 9, Morris on the right, Arriola on the left. I think that gives you the best balance you can come up with here. It gives you guys in Morris and Arriola who are going to be up for the fight, guys who will track back and do what you need to do defensively to allow Yedlin and Dest to potentially be the game changers going forward.
And the question that you posed this morning on the Twitters, you were looking for the Friday flashback question. Go ahead. It's what was your favorite USMNT performance you would like to see the team emulate tonight? Did you have one in mind when you posed the question?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to say the 2002 quarterfinal against Germany because I still think that's the best the U.S. has ever played. That's harder to emulate. I think the things you can control when you're trying to emulate something, it's effort, it's work rate, it's those types of factors. And I would go with the game against Argentina in the Copa America in 1995 because even though Argentina rotated the lineup and then had to make some changes at halftime, the U.S. went into that game with a huge chip on their shoulder. They had an opportunity to get through the group in the Copa America, and they also had a lot to prove. And that's maybe what's missing right now is you go back to that team. You had Steve Sampson, who was an interim manager at the time because things had fallen apart with Bora Milutinovic and the U.S. Soccer Federation. So Sampson is trying to impress to get the job. You had the team had went on strike right before the competition, and they were trying to get a new CBA done. The team was fighting for more equal pay across the group. The federation was offering experienced players more than the new players breaking in terms of the per game type of stuff, and the group as a whole said, no, we want it the same across the board. to the point that the Federation was about to send the U23s down to play in the Copa America. And I don't think the team really trained once they got to South America because they were negotiating back and forth. They win their first game. They lose their second game. They have a shot to go through, and they're playing Argentina. And they went into it, and I went back and looked at some quotes. Eric Winalda, always good for a quote. Winalda talking about that game, he said, I think collectively we said, just don't give these guys time. One thing you learn as a footballer over time is that when you're hesitant or scared to go in hard on someone, it's because you're afraid to get beat. There was an I've got your back attitude on that team. If you miss a tackle, I'll be right behind you. No one let anybody down. Our mindset was do not let them hook up. And this is the one that this team has really been missing. Now, the U.S. wants to set the rhythm. They want to find the rhythm. They want to be in control of the rhythm of the match. That's the mindset that the U.S. has. And that's a good mindset to have. I like the mindset. You can't always do that, and you can't always be in control of that. And when you're not, and the other team is trying to find the rhythm, you have to do a little bit of what Eric Winalda says here. There were several 20-second stints where they tried to find a rhythm, and then it was a crunching tackle, a slide tackle, an elbow to their head, and they just never got a rhythm. You have to break it up, and you have to go in physical sometimes, and you have to put somebody on the ground sometimes. And you have to find those ways when the other team starts to gain that momentum and you can feel it ramping up. Get stuck into a tackle, knock somebody over, create a dust-up, whatever you got to do. That's what this game needs sometimes. And the U.S. in Canada looked a lot like Winalda described in the first quote about when you're hesitant or scared to go in hard on someone, it's because you're afraid to get beat. They've got to understand, and that's why you go back to the way that I talked about the lineup with Areola and Morris out wide. And whether it's Yedlin or Cannon, they both want to get forward. Yedlin, I think, is better at it. That's why I would lean to him. I wouldn't be shocked if Cannon gets the start. Left side, it's got to be Dest. They want to get forward. They want to go. They can't be hesitant. They can't be hesitant both to go forward with the ball, but also to step up and be aggressive. They have to know that they've got cover. And whether that is McKinney, Leggett, Morales drifting out wide to cover that space, or it's because they know Paul Areola or Jordan Morris is going to get on the horse and get back and cover for them. That's what the Canada match felt like in Toronto. It felt like a team that was hesitant to make a mistake. Can't play that way. Not in these kinds of games. Not against teams that are going to match or outwork you, have more intensity than you. You can't play hesitant against teams like that. And I hope that's the biggest change. And going back and watching some of that game last night, the U.S.-Argentina game from 1995, it feels like a completely different team. I mean, it feels like a completely different program. Like, that lineup, is it as good as the team you have right now? Technically, no, I don't think it is. But you had players who proved more. You had more veterans in that group, and that does play into it. Sure, definitely. But the fight was there, and all the things that Winalda talked about with crunching tackles and elbows to the head, yeah, sure. I mean, he talked about it. Diego Simeone was held out of the lineup, and he came on at halftime because they were trailing 2-0. But Simeone is going through the tunnel just cursing at everybody, U.S. players, everybody included, and him and Winalda got into it. Because, obviously, I don't know if Simeone knew that players understood Spanish, but there you go. And they got into it once the game started and trading shots back and forth. Once, Simeone came on in the second half. That's what's going to happen in these games. And at times, you've got to be the team that, you play the bully role. The U.S. has got to be willing to do that in games against a young Canada team that wants to get out on the run. Alphonso Davies pulls some step overs and starts to get past you. Put a hit on him. Take the yellow card. Make him think about it the second time he gets that opportunity. Same with Jonathan David. That's the international game. And that's the biggest difference for me about this whole conversation. You go back to what Bruce Arena said about Greg Berhalter. The national team is being run like a club team. It can't be, because you don't get that time to build things up. The long-term progress, the long-term development are secondary to results and winning games and advancing in tournaments. And when you start talking more about the individual result and less about the overall progress, you start talking about the intensity. You start talking about these types of things. You start talking about physicality. That's why the U.S. for a long time felt like they punched above their weight, because technically, no, maybe they weren't as good as the teams they were playing, but you weren't going to outwork them. Now it's flipped. You have better players, but they're not outworking teams, and teams who are lesser talents than them are outworking them. And they're not good enough to get outworked and win games. You have to have both. And in the national team level, in my opinion, because you have less time, because you have less of a tactical imprint on these teams, the work rate, the effort, the intensity becomes even more amplified. And that's what we have to see tonight, or it's going to be a bad night for U.S. soccer. And I'm tired of having bad nights for U.S. soccer. It's just getting to a point that, it's showing at the ticket box office. It's showing with the ratings. It's showing with the general level of apathy for the program. And it's really sad that that's the case, because for the longest time, the national team was what brought American soccer together. And right now, it's not. And it's something that they have to get these elements back of outworking teams. Building, of course. Progress, yes, you want to see them play better soccer. I am so on that train. You don't want to see them have to play long ball and kick and chase and all that. No, we want to see better. But you can't sacrifice the things that have gotten you to this point while you are building that. And that's what I feel like is going on. And another bad result, and here a bad result knocks you out of the Nations League semifinals. It would be another massive step forward for Canada, and it would be a huge setback for U.S. soccer. And then you don't have a competitive game until the hex starts. That's a huge, scary situation to be in. I hope that's not what we're talking about at the end of the night, but we will see. We'll get a little bit deeper into it, especially from the Canada side, what their lineup could look like, players to watch, et cetera, et cetera. We'll get into your tweets as well right after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here, November 15th. The Friday flashback question is, what U.S. national team performance, and we'll keep it to the men's side, because the women have shown the things that we're talking about pretty consistently. I mean, Jill Ellis talked about how they dealt with pressure and how they were accustomed to it and lived in it, and it wasn't overwhelming to them. We know they can handle it. We know they've done it many times. On the men's side, what's your favorite U.S. men's national team performance that you would like to see the team play like tonight against Canada? It's a critical game, no matter what Ernie Stewart and others try to tell you. It's a must-win, and we will see if the U.S. are capable of beating Canada in Orlando in what hopefully will be a decent crowd. But I know last week the advanced ticket sales were about 8,000.
Yeah, that's the last number I heard.
Stadium, which is not good. That was last week. I hope they sold more tickets in the last week, but I don't know how many more they would have sold. So we'll see. We'll see what it looks like tonight. I want to get into real quick before we hit the Twitters. Nico Cantor, who covers both MLS and the U.S. national team for TUDN. First off, TUDN has committed a ton of resources to covering the U.S., so maybe more so than anybody else. And that should tell you a lot of things. First off, when you look at the ratings in Spanish language for the U.S., and this is men and women, they are really good. Really, really good. And TUDN has talked about not just wanting to be the network for soccer in Spanish in the United States. They want to be the network for soccer in the United States, period. Now, they are limited with some things that they cover, that they can't offer English language commentary, and they do their best to work around it. And honestly, I think for a lot of people who are following the game in this country, get more comfortable with things being in Spanish and figuring out how to navigate that, whether it is, working on the Duolingo or whatever works for you. They provide outstanding coverage, and Nico provides a lot of it in English. And he gave a great Twitter thread of his interview with Greg Berhalter. He shared some of the quotes on Twitter. I'm assuming that'll be part of their pregame coverage tonight. A couple quotes from Berhalter. They talked about mentality, and they talked about the last Canada match. Berhalter said, "We talked about the mentality and Canada's intensity and not matching that. It's something that we paid particular attention to this camp. Just focusing on competing in every single thing we do." Those are things you can build in training sessions. Those are things that you can stress the importance of in training sessions. And if that has been the focus of this camp and the training sessions around this camp, to raise the intensity level, to raise the competitive level, good, because that's addressing an issue. Talking about pressure, Berhalter said, "I think it's a great opportunity for this team to perform under pressure. That's what our jobs are. When you talk about international soccer, there's a lot of high-stakes games. And part of this group's learning/development is dealing with games like this." 100% accurate. And that's why Ernie Stewart's comments were bothersome, because you have to learn how to deal with pressure. The technical staff, the players, everybody. Because you can't tell me that you have no worries about qualifying for the World Cup if you can't deal with this pressure in the Nations League. It's the whole point of the Nations League. That's why it is a valuable thing, because you get these opportunities. You're not feeling these in a friendly. You're feeling these types of emotions in a game that matters, where your advancement in the tournament is on the line. This is where, Berhalter's trying to sell where they are right now. And talking about progress, He said, it's everywhere. I think the team's organized. There's a clear way we're trying to play. I think it's very identifiable. You can see in our games we're starting to be what the men's national team is trying to be. We just need to get better at that. I don't think it's that far along just yet. I mean, the game in Canada, there was organization, yes. That part is accurate. But organization coming at the expense of players playing freely is a little bit of a concern. And I know people had that concern about Atlanta United early on with Frank de Boer. I think it was overblown then. I think this is a prime example, and that Canada match is an absolute prime example of that, of a team that's in its own head too much. And that's something that Ian Dark was on the football show this morning on Sirius XM FC, and he said that players have told him that they're having problems implementing everything that Berhalter wants them to do. So progress in terms of being organized, okay, but maybe it's a little too organized at this point. And if the effort to get organized is costing you games because of the way you're playing, is it worth it? Can you get there a different way? And that's going to be something that Berhalter is going to have to figure out. He told Cantor what he's learned, and I think this is really important. He said, I think you learn on how you can develop the group in a short period of time, what you need to do in each camp, focusing on each game. We've learned a lot in that last away game. We've learned the level of desperation that our opponents have when we go play away. It's understanding that, deal with it, and thrive in that area. It's a young team that we have. It's a team that needs to keep developing, and we're going to keep doing that. And the technical staff has to continue doing that as well, because that was your first away game under Greg Berhalter. That was the first time they had played away from home in a meaningful game, in a competitive game. Well, his next one is going to be Cuba, but it's not technically away. It's neutral site, so we'll push that up to the side. Then the next one is going to be his first game in the Hex, 1 of 5 away, 1 of 10 overall, where you cannot afford to drop points on a regular basis because you dig a hole that you can't climb out of. That's what worries me, is you have somebody who's never been through this, and the first time out on the road, it was a little scary. A little scary. Let's get into the Twitter timeline and see, but massive props to Nico Cantor and Tudayene for covering the U.S. men's national team in a very intense way. I love it.
Okay, you want to get into folks' team performances or stuff outside of that?
Whatever. Mix it up.
All right. Let's go Ricky Ricardo. And he says his favorite USMNT performance that I actually watched has to be the 2010 group stage game against Algeria and the way it ended. They fought till the end and produced a moment of magic, and maybe we'll need to have one tonight. #Friday Flashback.
100%. And that team, that 2010 team, is a really good example of it, because you can go back to the Confederations Cup the year before. It was the same group for the most part. You lost Charlie Davies as part of it, which affected your 2010 performance in a big way, in my opinion. But they were scrappy. They were just difficult to deal with. Spain had a problem dealing with the U.S. in Confederations Cup. Brazil had a huge problem in the first half dealing with the U.S. Every team in the World Cup had a problem dealing with the U.S. They didn't go away easily. They didn't make anything easy for the opposition. If you can take that and bring it to tonight, I'll be happy. I'll be happy, because I think if you have a team that plays that way and makes it difficult for Canada, you'll win tonight.
And that was the game that stuck into my head as the team and performance that I was looking for tonight. Jarrett has come in this morning, and he says his favorite performance, the Spain 2009 Confederations Cup.
Yeah, same era. That's what I was just saying. It's the same era where you had a team that was just difficult to play against. And that's an element that this team has lost. And it's something they need to regain, because you want to outplay teams for sure, but if you can't, you have to have something else, because you don't have another 30 games in the regular season to deal with. Like, this is it. So if you can't outplay Canada tonight, well, you better outwork them, and you better make it difficult for them to find anything. And that's the international game. It's something that it feels like this team has lost a little bit.
Heath Bradley says he'd like to see the fight like U.S.-Mexico in the 2002 World Cup. That performance came out of nowhere to get us furthest in the World Cup since the 1930s.
Yeah, everything fell really well for that team. I mean, they lost badly in the last group game to Poland, and that was the type of performance that just terrifies you, because they looked flat and scared and overwhelmed after having a great tournament up to that point. They got bailed out by South Korea beating Portugal, and then they also, in a lot of ways, got bailed out by getting Mexico in the round of 16, a team that they knew they could beat because they had been beating them regularly before that, a team that they had turned the tables on in CONCACAF. So it changed the mindset a little bit. Also, that was a game where Bruce Arena probably pulled his greatest tactical move in a pregame, where he went to a 3-5-2 with Claudio Reyna as a right wing back, and Mexico had no idea what hit him, and they had to make a first half substitution to try to match it and try to deal with it. That's when you know you've got a team on the ropes. That was a different type of performance, because it was physical and they dealt with a lot, but it was also a performance that they got the tactics right for the match. The performances were great, and they made the other team lose their heads. And that's one that you don't see a ton of in U.S. soccer history. And it's one that I hope we'll get to see more and more of.
You remember yesterday with Daniel Price and his abnormal pessimism?
Yes.
He's had a drinking game created for tonight to make it a little more bearable in his mind.
Okay.
Canada scores. It's a shot. A missed chance.
I don't think Canada's going to score that many goals. So if you're looking to get drunk, you probably need to rearrange your penalties here.
A missed chance is a sip. A USA goal is a shot. An own goal against the U.S. is 2 shots. A yellow card for a U.S. player is a shot. A foul against a U.S. player.
Yellow cards for U.S. players. Yellow cards are not a bad thing, y'all. Like, I want them, especially if it's no. These need to happen. A lot of people have this idea that a yellow card, oh no, that's a bad. Get a yellow card. Like, Fred Morales, go kick Alphonso Davies if he dribbles past somebody. Put him on his back. Like, don't try to injure him. Don't try to kick him in the head. But commit a hard foul. Make him think twice about coming through the middle, step over, taking off, running past everybody. Put him on the ground. Take a card. You got to play differently, but take the card. I would celebrate that. I mean, if you want to get drunk, you might see more yellow cards than goals in this game. So, okay, maybe that is the way to do it if you're trying to get hammered at the end.
A foul against a U.S. player is a sip. A Canada win is 2 shots, and a USA win is 1 shot.
Got to work on this, Daniel. I don't think you're set up properly.
And Daniel did say that if anyone wants to add more rules, be sure to add on.
I think you're going to have to tweak these things a lot. Yeah, I got to think about that one. I don't know about that.
But, I mean, for me...
Way too pessimistic, Daniel.
But for me, I've always wondered what's wrong with a professional foul and slowing down momentum and getting a yellow card.
There's nothing wrong with it. Not all yellow cards are created equal. Those kind of yellow cards are fine. Yellow cards for talking, complaining, even some of those are okay. Sometimes it's too much. There are dumb yellow cards, but there are plenty of yellow cards that you will take. There are red cards that you will take. I will still put my hand up and say Luis Suarez's red card in the World Cup, handball on the line to deny a goal for Ghana. He gets the red. He gets suspended for the semifinal, but because Ghana missed the penalty and then they go to a shootout and Uruguay wins, that's the best red card in the history of the game. And anybody who wanted to call him a cheat for that, you've got 20 other things you can get mad at Luis Suarez about. That one, he was punished, as he should have been, completely properly punished for what he did. What he did kept his team alive and gave them another opportunity. So, I'll take that. I'll take a yellow card that's for a professional foul when somebody's trying to break. I'll take those situations.
Daniel is now officially asking for your assistance in doing the game that he has set up.
Well, I mean, I got to know what the goal is. I mean, is Daniel expecting Canada to win and he wants to get just hammered to forget it tomorrow? If that's the case, then you got to start, like, shot on goal for Canada is a shot. Because you want to, it depends. I mean, if you're trying to get drunk, then you want to make it to where you're going to get drunk. If you're trying to punish yourself for Canada doing well, then okay. Then you need to, like, if the U.S. scores a goal, you need to drink a glass of water. You know, like something like that. If the U.S. does something good, if they do take a professional yellow card foul, then you sip on water, you take a shot of Coca-Cola. I don't know. But if you're trying to get hammered, then it's you finish your drink when Canada scores. It's a shot for a shot on goal, stuff like that.
He's looking for a fun night.
I don't know if you're going to have a fun night watching this game. There's nothing I can do to help you with that.
So take that advice, Daniel, and take the rules appropriately and go from there. Let's see. Baskers feels bad pointing out my mistake, but the triumvirate member is Marcus Lenetius Crassus with an R, not Cassius. And I also said Brutus when it's Pompey, so he recommends me reading The History of Rome by Mike Duncan.
You probably need to explain why you just dropped that out of nowhere, and people who might not have listened to yesterday's show are thinking that you have lost your mind again.
There was a part of the show yesterday where I went Greek mythology having to do with, and I honestly I forget the context, but I mentioned Brutus, Cassius, and Caesar as the three individuals that were tied to a particular event. Like I said, I don't remember the context of it, but once again I had my Greek mythology messed up, and so Badaska Baskers came in and got me set straight.
Wait a minute. Now I'm confused.
What?
You had your Greek mythology mixed up with Julius Caesar?
Well, it's like my Latin class or whatever. My Latin class from high school and college.
I thought I had lost my mind for a second.
No, I lost mine a long time ago. I don't recommend trying to follow my trains of thought. I have long since debated after our shows are over to do what they used to do in the old days with Dennis Miller. They would post a Dennis Miller annotated and sit there and say, okay, here's all of his references and here's what they mean, and do that after every show so folks knew where I was trying to carry a conversation with very obscure references.
You might need to. But then you might need an annotated if you're sending Julius Caesar to Greece.
A double annotated? That'd be pretty unique.
You'd have to then have a correction to the annotations.
Well, yeah. See that? Well, God, then the correction would be longer than the annotation every day.
Yeah, I'm confused already.
Well, it's a Friday. Nothing wrong with that.
But I'm just mad that Baskers was able to point this out and I missed it since I pounced on everything. I was slipping. My bad. I apologize.
But yeah, and Daniel, of course, has piled on, and he's like, not even Greek, it's Roman. So there you go.
I was kind of wondering. So glad I'm not the only one.
No, Chris Hutchison says break a leg, Berhalter. I don't know if that's meant to be figurative or literal.
Well, that's mean.
I don't know if he's meaning to be supportive or if it's just throwing your hands up in the air like you just don't care and going, yeah, dude, whatever.
Why do you assume the worst of people? That's
because
a very
of
common
what people are seeing these days with the men's national team and their general responses on our timeline.
Yeah, but asking for people's legs to be broken and to assume that that's what the tweet is, that's kind of harsh. I mean,
hey, I'm just glad we haven't had any Myles Garrett references toward the men's national team this morning.
That guy.
We have some questions having to do with, and some thoughts having to do with Atlanta United specifically, and then some news of the day that has come across. Is there anything else that you have left on the table when it comes to the matchup tonight specifically before we go into these other things?
Yeah, I mean, your questions about Canada tonight, Mark Anthony Kaye, you would expect to be back in the starting lineup. He was able to come off the bench in the Western Conference Final for LAFC, probably back to a starting role. Liam Fraser came on for him in that game. In Toronto, I think Fraser goes back to the bench. I would be shocked if they change things up with Alphonso Davies. I think for Canada, he's more effective in that kind of free role up top. My question for Canada is, do they go to a line of 5 here? They did against Mexico at the Gold Cup. You do have Daniel Henry healthy, so you could play the line of 4 you had and add Henry in as a center back with 3 center backs and Kamal Miller on the outside on the left, who can also sit at home and give you a true line of 5 and just make it difficult to break down, and still play David and Davies up top. You could still make that work. You're going to sacrifice a central midfielder to do it, but in a game like this where a result for Canada gets you through to the semifinals, a result for Canada is gotta be enough to guarantee their spot in the Hex, with the FIFA rankings being the determination of that. Maybe that's the way to go, and the fact that John Herdman did it against Mexico at the Gold Cup makes you think that maybe they'll go 5-3-2 here. The one thing that jumped out looking back at that game that has to change tonight, Josh Sargent received 2 passes in the penalty area last time around against Canada. You're not gonna win a game that way, and you've got to win this game. In Canada, you could have gotten a result and you would have been okay. Well, you got to win this one. So how do you change that? Is it the flank play with Areola, with Morris, with your outside backs overlapping? Is it expecting Sebastian Lletget and his passing to unlock things? Or could it be dialing up the pressure and putting a Canada backline under pressure more? Because the few times that the U.S. did that, they didn't really look all that convincing in dealing with it. So is it getting away from what Greg Berhalter's been trying to do as a whole here and focusing on what this game gives you? And what this game might end up giving you is playing direct, letting Sargent and Morris fight for 50-50s, looking for the second ball with McKennie and Lletget, and then when you don't win it, press, and make the game stretched and wild. That might be the best way to deal with it. Now, in a perfect world, you're able to use your possession, you're able to create opportunities, you're able to score goals and play your game and be in complete control. Playing direct, opening up that game and looking for 50-50s and trying to press, you're conceding control to do that. But if you can't win with control, that's what you're going to have to do. And will that decision get made tonight if that is the way through here? Or, more importantly, if just your possession, your control is not leading to opportunities? Are you going to be able to make that decision and go against a little bit of what you've been working on to get a result here? I think you have to. I think result here is critical, and if you have to step away from that progress and that overall development of how you want the U.S. men's national team to play, well, you got to do it because you have to win tonight. And if it's winning through long balls and pressure, well, then that's what you got to do.
For me, it came, as I was writing my show notes this morning, the 3 words I had with an exclamation point. I wanted an Al Davis performance. I wanted to just win, baby. That's pretty much what I was looking for tonight. Daniel also thinks Daniel thinks it's funny that if the USMNT wins tonight with the same scoreline as in Canada, it comes down to who pummeled Cuba better.
Yeah, that's how these groups go. I mean, evenly matched groups, that's how they go. You wouldn't have thought it would have come down to that at this point, but yeah, that's where you're at, is you're going to have to go to the Cayman Islands and win by more than Canada did, and Canada only won 1-0 against Cuba away, so you should be able to take care of that. You have to win both games, and you have to turn the goal differential by 3. So if you win both games by 1 goal, you've turned it by 2. So you have to find a 2-goal win out of the 2 games. If you can't do that, you don't deserve to go to the Nations League semifinals. I think they'll be okay, but they got to win tonight. Yep. If they don't win tonight, forget it. And tonight is not the one where you're worried about margin so much. Tonight's the one where you just need to do what it takes.
We have folks who are talking about things other than the match tonight.
Well, let's take a quick break and reset, finish up hour number 1. If you have any more national team tweets, if you have any more performances you want the team to emulate, tweet them at us at Soccer Down here, and then we'll get into expansion draft protected lists. We'll get into talk about women's professional leagues, and that was plural. We'll talk about some other rumors around MLS, all of that right after this.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here, wrapping up hour number 1. Mike Conti will be joining us at 10 o'clock. We'll talk Atlanta United, expansion draft, all the things when we flip it back to the club side. But some other things to dig into quickly this morning. We're going to talk about the Grant Wall report later in hour number 2 as we kind of digest this. There's a report in Sports Illustrated that USL is interested in launching a women's professional league to compete with the NWSL. Now, at one point, there was talk that USL would be interested in taking over that management contract that U.S. Soccer, the federation, had in kind of being the administrator for the NWSL. This was in the last year that there were reports USL might be interested in picking that up. So I'm wondering where it's progressed from that to now potentially starting a competing league. The USL's had a women's league before, but it was an amateur league. It was similar to USL League 2 in that it was a summer league for college players to play in. They dropped that a few years ago. You have the WPSL, which is that now, amateur, maybe / semi-pro. I'll be curious to see what USL is thinking here. we'll get to that in hour number 2. Some other things that are out there. Garth Lagerwey, the general manager of the Seattle Sounders, said on KJR radio this week that the 2020 MLS season would be kicking off on Saturday, February 29th. It's the earliest start for MLS in its history. It's honestly the same kind of start as it was last year. It was, March 2nd, I think, last year. It's just the way the calendar falls. But this is the first time they've started their season in February. It is not as early as many people thought it would be. There were many folks that thought that the season would start second week of February, third week of February. This is really not starting any earlier in terms of calendar. One thing that was interesting was Lagerwey also said the Sounders training camp would open on January 11th. That is earlier. That's about 10 days earlier than it was last year. Now, the teams that are in Champions League do get to start earlier, but that would be even earlier than Atlanta United started last year by a few days. Not a ton, but by a few extra days. So if Seattle is starting on the 11th, you would assume that Atlanta, LAFC, NYC are also starting on or around the 11th to get ready for CONCACAF Champions League, which is still going to be a round of 16 tie. Both games would be before you start your MLS play. So none of that's changed. Don't know why. The idea was if you move the season finale up, then you would be moving the start of the season up. And if you're not going to, well, you're still going to have a lot of midweek games. Now, there was a report earlier, and again, the reporting about the season starting earlier is proven to be incorrect, so we don't know about this yet. But you don't have a Gold Cup. You don't have the U.S. participating in a Copa America Centenario type of situation. So there shouldn't be a need for an extended summer break. So maybe that gap where you had Atlanta United, for example, didn't play from June 2nd to June 26th this year in league play. They had Open Cup going on at that time, but they didn't have league matches. You'll get those weeks back, so you might not have as many midweek games. But in the long run, I want to see how MLS deals with this, because you're going to have the MLS Cup final around the time that it was this year because of the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. You're going to have that final early enough to get everything wrapped up and completed before guys report to the World Cup in 2022. So that part's not going to change. Next year, you'll have a Gold Cup to deal with schedule-wise. You're going to have to take a break in the summer. The following year will be weird because you won't have anything in that summer break. So you'll be able to play straight through. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. We'll see when Atlanta United announces their dates for everything. And we should get home openers before Christmas. That's been pretty typical in recent years. We'll see what Mike Conti thinks about that. We'll see what he thinks about the potential on the expansion draft protected lists that will be announced to the public tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Expansion draft on Tuesday at 5 o'clock. We'll get into all of that with Mike right after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Welcome back. Hour number 2, Soccer Down Here. We are going to push the national team talk to the side because we don't want to be depressed for another hour. And we're going to talk about MLS and the expansion draft and everything going on around the league with our buddy Mike Conti. What's up, Mike?
Hey, guys. Did you ever see the, I think it was an NFL Films documentary on Howard Cosell? And it's an old one. If you haven't seen it, I would totally understand.
Yeah, it's been a while, I think.
I think it's like 20 years old. But there was, I think they were interviewing Rick Riley, and they were asking him for his recollections of Howard Cosell. And Rick Riley goes, yeah, there was a time where I was a young writer for Sports Illustrated, and I called up Cosell because I wanted to interview him. And Cosell picked up the phone and goes, Rick Riley? No interest whatsoever. And that's kind of how I feel about the national team tonight.
Oh.
No interest whatsoever.
See, that's a huge problem. I have that it's gotten to that point that, I mean, people who live and breathe the game are like, I'm not interested. I don't care.
No, because there's so much negativity right now. So much negativity. And it starts with the manager. I mean, I think I've been pretty transparent about that. I really blame Greg Berhalter for costing Atlanta United the MLS Cup. And I'll probably insist upon that for a long time. But it goes to the manager and players not wanting to do anything for the shirt nor the manager. And you see these players, when they get away from the manager, going out and you know, performing at a level that they don't perform with the national team. So no interest whatsoever. I'm not hoping they lose, obviously. I mean, I'm rooting for them. But these are the high-risk, low-reward matches, fixtures that just absolutely make you dread whatever the outcome is. If they win 7-0 tonight, everyone will scream, well, they should have won 7-0. If they draw or lose, then it becomes, pitchforks and torches again, and it probably should. So I just, like I said, I'll be watching John on GPB tonight. No Hawks game tonight, so going to open up a bottle of wine and watch some high school football and enjoy that.
I will be suffering along with fans over at the Brewhouse Cafe watching this because I don't want to watch it at home because I might throw something up agat the wall.
Yeah.
I won't do that in public. So I'm going to head over and watch it.
I want to be really clear again. I'm not rooting against them. Like, I'm not rooting against them. And I don't want to be seen as this front runner that when, we really get deep into the hex in the next qualifying cycle that if I come back and start to get interested and tweet about them a lot and talk about them a lot, that I'm a front runner. It's not that at all. I don't want people to think that. I just don't care right now. I don't care about this. And as things stand right now, they aren't giving me a reason to care. They're giving me a reason to be very, very despondent and negative. And I don't want to be a part of that tonight. I've got better things to do.
Do you care about Thierry Henry being named the new manager of the Montreal Impact?
I think that's awesome. I think that's a brilliant move. Brilliant move. Why not?
I've rescinded my initial thoughts.
Out of 20.
Okay. And Monaco. I think from a cultural standpoint, well, first of all, I mean, he gives the league, how do I put this? You look at the big names that have come to this league manage teams. Thierry Henry is a big name. If we're going to hold his recent struggles against him, then I think we would have to go back and maybe second guess our approach to how we appreciated the Frank DeBoer hiring.
No. And this is why I'll push back on that. Thierry Henry's won 4 games as a manager, period. Frank DeBoer won 4 titles. So it's not, you don't have the track record. That's why I'll go against it. I think it's a great move for buzz, for excitement, for getting your attention. Absolutely. But the description, I don't know if you saw this, the description from the GM about the hiring process, they didn't interview anybody else.
They didn't talk to anyone else.
Thierry Henry called them.
Yeah.
And they wanted to go through the whole process with him before they interviewed anybody else. That's a scary way of choosing a manager.
Yeah, I get it, but Montreal has been dysfunction junction for the last couple years, have they not?
That's why it's not a shock. Yeah, no, I agree.
And just from a cultural fit standpoint, you've got a French-speaking manager in a French-speaking city. I want Montreal to continue to be a strong market for this league. I think he creates the buzz. I think if the team is assembled smartly, he should be able to achieve success there. I think there's a lot more parity in MLS than the one he came from. So
I don't have any faith in him doing the job that's needed. That's the biggest thing, is I just have zero faith in him doing that. Will he give them a little more leeway in building a team? Will people give him a little bit more of a shot than they would random manager who has experience in Ligue 1? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think fans will be a little more forgiving, but he's got to show, and he'll have the opportunity to do it. And I don't think, again, random manager from Ligue 1 would have this opportunity. They wouldn't be able to call Montreal up and get the job without anybody else getting interviewed. He's going to get an opportunity that nobody else would. And now he's got to do something with it, because it's not even just the results at Monaco. It's some of the things that came out during and afterwards that are really concerning. When you see the players go to the board and say, look, no, we're not doing this anymore. Like, he wanted to bench everybody after a game, I think, where they lost in the cup. He wanted to bench everybody, send them to the reserves, and the players went to the board and said, no, we're done.
Yeah.
And they fired him. Like, when you're getting that level of dysfunction, maybe Montreal's the right place, but I don't know if that's what I would be wanting to hire. He's got to be different in that mentality. And if he is, then he'll have the opportunity to do well.
Well, maybe he learned some things at Monaco. I mean,
I hope so.
I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think he's taken a leap of faith on MLS, and maybe now we as MLS observers need to take a leap of faith on him. And I'm not dismissing your concerns; they're valid. I get it.
The reason I would say something back to that, though, is MLS needs to be at a higher standard than a big name calls a team and says, "Yes, I'm interested in the job," and the team doesn't interview anybody else, because he doesn't have this huge track record as a manager to fall back on. He has a huge track record as a player. And I hope MLS gets to a point that it's, yes, that's great, you're interested, we're going to talk to you, and we want to know what you would do, and especially what you would do differently, but we're going to talk to X, Y, and Z as well. I want MLS to get to that point to where players can't just call up and say, yeah, I want to be a manager, I want another opportunity. Okay, here it is.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That's totally fair. But again,
I hope I'm wrong about him. I want him to do well, but
it feels like a very Joey Saputo thing to do.
It does.
So, again, your concerns are valid. I'm not dismissing them. I will choose to give him the benefit of the doubt and cross my fingers it works out. I like Montreal. I like going up there. I've been very transparent about that. I like their team. I like the club, not club culture, but I like the supporters culture that exists around the Impact. I think that can be a really, really strong market for MLS, and I'm pulling for Thierry Henry, just not against Atlanta United.
No, I'm with you, Mike. Initially, I was like, I love this idea of having Thierry Henry come in to coach Montreal, but then after hearing the hiring process, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. And that to me was my first red flag. So
you know what
I have
the thing
rescinded
is,
my initial opinion.
Yeah. And sorry to interrupt, John. I'm sorry.
No,
you know what the thing is, though? I mean, and this isn't just an MLS. This happens in the National Football League. This really, really happens in major college football. Mm-hmm. You can interview 4 or 5 different candidates with the intent of not considering to hire any of them because you've had a candidate identified all along. It is possible that this was just Montreal's guy and they didn't want to waste time. Now, the fact that Henry...
that's the thing is he called.
I get that, Jason, but I mean, yes, he called, but were feelers put out to him? Was there a back channel?
The GM didn't say there was. He said that Henry called and that's who they went with, and they wanted to follow that process before they talked to anybody else. If he had said it differently, I'd be with you.
Yeah, and we're also taking the GM at his word. This type of thing happens in major college football all the time. Georgia probably interviewed 4 or 5 different guys when they hired Kirby Smart, but Kirby Smart was their guy all along. In the NFL, you see teams interviewing people all the time with zero intent of hiring them because they have a candidate identified all the time, but there are procedures they have to go through to interview a certain number of candidates. So, I wouldn't take this as, well, MLS needs to be better than this because it happens elsewhere. It does happen elsewhere. And again, Jason, I'm not, you know me, I would never, ever, get into a debate with you on anything.
No, please do. No.
Well, I don't want you to think I'm dismissing what you're saying because you're absolutely right. You bring up some really, really good points. But I guess I just, again, I'm trying to look at this more glass half full than glass half empty. And I think if you look at this glass half full, this is a move that makes a lot of sense for Montreal.
It gets buzz. I think the league has grown past a point, in my opinion, and maybe it hasn't, but I think it has, and I think it's trying to, and I'd hope that it will to get past hiring these types of hires. I just think they can do better.
Let me bring up one other possibility. I mean, with everything that's been written about Joey Saputo's behavior, it's very possible that no one else wanted this job.
Also possible, yeah.
I don't know how it works in MLS compared to the other major stick and ball leagues in North America, but, in a lot of cases when a coaching job becomes open, it's agents making contacts with team representatives or ownership or something like that, and that's what gets the process started. It might be that no one else wanted this job. And the things you read about the way Joey Saputo has behaved, and the way that he'll storm into dressing rooms and say things and do things and have hair triggers on Remy Gard and Wilmer Cabrera and all that, it's possible that this job might not be as attractive as we think it is, and that Thierry Henry may have been the only person truly interested. So, again, it's just all the prism that you look at it. I think, again, looking at this glass half full, there are a lot of things to like about this, and that I would not be so certain that Montreal didn't do their due diligence or that they didn't execute some kind of search, either formal or informal. If we take the general manager at his word, you're right, Jason, there are a lot of red flags, but I don't know if we can take the GM at his word.
The GM might need some PR training if he's
here's the other thing, too. You are dealing with English-French language barriers, and that makes it. We see that all the time, don't we? And that makes it, whether it's English-Spanish, English-French, whatever. And sometimes, the meaning of a sentence in French is not exactly the same as the context of the sentence in English.
Well, and for me,
very true.
No, I was just going to say, Mike, for me, the comparison from everything that we've seen recently about Joey Saputo was like the 1970s George Steinbrenner.
Absolutely. Who wants to work in that environment?
Billy Martin.
Right, and that's it. He was the guy. Bob Lemon could only make it 1 year. Billy Martin was the only guy who was willing to tolerate it. So maybe Thierry Henry is the only guy. Now, it brings up the broader concern and broader question that maybe Joey Saputo needs to look at himself in the mirror and be a little more hands-off.
100%.
But that narrative is out there, and it cannot be changed overnight. So
I just had a bad flashback to Walter Zinga taking over the New England Revolution and some of the other hires that we've seen in this league over the years that I kind of thought that it was past it of inexperienced guys. Now, Patrick Vieira will point the other way in terms of a manager with not much experience who did well, but then Dome Tarrant came on and I thought made the team even better and had to deal with more challenges than Vieira did, and he improved it. I don't know where Vieira's ceiling was going to be with New York City. I'm really going to keep an eye on Montreal because I feel like they're one of the sleeping giants in the league in terms of atmosphere and engagement with their fan base and all of that. I don't know if this move does anything to change it. I think it gets people excited about, wow, Thierry Henry's going to be in town. But Montreal also is a very smart soccer base. And I don't think they're going to get blinded by celebrity for a long time.
Unless he has immediate success. And, that could be a game changer, too.
Could be.
But you are spot on about Montreal being a sleeping giant in MLS. Did you see the Canadian TV ratings for the MLS Cup Final?
Mm-hmm. Great.
Mm-hmm. I mean, guys, we're at the point right now in Canada where MLS is arguably tied with the NBA for the number 2 league as far as interest in that nation is concerned, behind only the National Hockey League. I mean, it's really, really close. I think MLS has surpassed Major League Baseball. It has certainly surpassed the Canadian Football League. The TV ratings and the attendance has proved that. So you've got really 3 very potentially big clubs. I think Toronto is a big club, but Vancouver and Montreal can really create a triple crown of big clubs in Canada where they're going to be supported, they're going to get the level of interest, and as such generate the level of revenue that's going to help them go out and spend money on big players and frankly, spend money on a manager like Thierry Henry. I don't think Thierry Henry is coming over to do this for 80,000 Canadian. I mean, he's probably getting
$100.
Yeah.
Probably not, but again, I don't know what other offers he had out there. And that's the thing for a Thierry Henry. He can come here, and if it goes well, and honestly, for him, if it goes okay, and that's the thing where MLS does have some forgiving setup. If he gets them to the playoffs, if he gets past the round of 16 in CONCACAF, because that's where he's starting, is in CONCACAF, which will be a blast. Right. If he gets them to the quarterfinals of CONCACAF and they're competitive, if he gets them into the playoffs in 2020, that's a successful year. And that will rebuild his reputation a bit. And that's not unreasonable to expect.
No. I mean, we don't know exactly what the roster is going to look like, but I think as long as they have Nacho Piatti, they're going to have a chance to be competitive every week.
And that's still iffy, though. And the questions about Montreal's roster are even bigger than the manager at this point. And that kind of gets us to the protected list and the expansion draft. Is Montreal is maybe the most complicated one. And Ben Baer did a great job going through every team and posting his projections. And Montreal was the one that jumped out to me because you've got 3 guys on loan from Bologna, which is also owned by Joey Saputo. Orji Okonkwo has made it kind of clear that I don't think he's going to come back. Safir Taider, Lassi Lapalainen are very important players. Since they're on loan from your owner's club in Italy, I think, and I don't know what the rules are on this, but this creates that gray area. If I'm Montreal, I'm leaving them unprotected, and I'm daring anybody to pick them because Bologna is not going to loan them to Nashville or Miami. They're only going to loan them to Joey Saputo's other club.
Well, and it's not even like the Atlanta United situation with Emerson Hyndman where you have a loan with a purchase option. There is no purchase option.
I don't think so. If there is, it's just on paper.
You own them.
Yeah, exactly.
They're playing for a club you own, so there's no purchase option. That's very bizarre. Very, very bizarre.
I'm wondering how that's going to be handled because that just creates some really shady situations.
But now, again, on the flip side of that, savvy sporting directors and team presidents can construct rosters in a way knowing that you're going into expansion drafts where, okay, let's stock up on some players who are on loan, and that minimizes our risk in expansion draft situations. I mean, I don't know if Montreal was necessarily playing 3D chess in that way, but it certainly works out to their advantage, and they could argue as such.
Yeah, it could. I think this expansion draft, kind of going through the list, looking at Ben's report at MLSsoccer.com and kind of going through them with some of my own questions, there are some quality players. There are going to be starters available to Nashville and Miami. There's a few teams that just the roster they have, they're not going to be able to protect everybody they want to, and they might have to protect a young player and risk losing a veteran. But there's also going to be the situation that we saw with Atlanta and Orlando in 2016, where Atlanta drafted Donny Toya expressly to trade him to Orlando because they wanted Donny Toya to be their left back. There are going to be players that are available that Atlanta or another existing team might say, you know what, I want that player. Pick them, and I'll give you something else. I'll give you allocation money. I'll give you whatever. But pick that player so you can trade them to me. I think you're going to see that. I think the first-round picks for Miami and Nashville, that's what they could end up being.
Well, let's look at what Cincinnati did last year. They took Darren Maddox, who was a part-time starter for them this year.
Yeah, who Ben Bear has unprotected. And it's borderline. He's right there on the edge for me.
Right. They took Kai Kamara and immediately traded him. And they got an international spot. They took Roland Lamah. They kept him, I think, right?
He played a decent bit. I don't think he's back, but he played a decent bit.
Then they took Eric Alexander from Houston with the fourth pick. Now, remember, they also worked it out with Atlanta where they traded for Greg Garza. But they took Eric Alexander, and he was gone midway through the year, wasn't he? Didn't he go to Dallas?
I don't think he played much if he did. Didn't really feature for them like I thought he would.
And then the fifth guy, they took a USL guy from Red Bulls. So now, granted,
who they did pick up the option on, and that was Hassan Nadam, who's a young player that they picked up his option for 2020. Now, this is where it gets a little interesting because Cincinnati is one of the only teams to announce those moves right now. Nobody else has because you don't have to. Nadam is a long-term, he's a project, and he could play next year for them. Do you leave him unprotected, or do you protect him since you've picked up his option and you've basically told everybody, like, yeah, we like this guy?
Right. I think my point is this. I guess it pertains maybe a little more to Nashville than Miami. Nashville did not use the expansion draft last year to load up on 5 guys who would immediately slot into their starting 11. They used it to complement their existing USL infrastructure, the players that they did transfer in over the course of 2018, like Fernando Adi, and then they used the expansion draft to acquire assets that could then be spun for international spots, TAM, GAM, all of that. I think when you're looking at Nashville, it might be a similar strategy, where they're not going to be going into this expansion draft looking for 5 guys that can immediately start for them, because there is an infrastructure in place and they have made some moves already. Miami is a real wild card because Miami does not have the same type of infrastructure. They need guys right now. You hear rumors and reports about all these people that they've targeted internationally, but they need guys. So it's interesting. I don't know if we're going to see 10 MLS starting caliber players plucked off rosters in this expansion draft.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I think we could have a few, but I don't think we're going to have 10. And that comes back to Atlanta United. And I think, as we did on Stoppage Time Wednesday, I think it's pretty straightforward who Atlanta United is going to protect and expose. But I think there are 1 or 2 questions.
Yeah, and since we did that in Stoppage Time and looking at it now, there's a couple things that have been clarified. So the Generation Adidas situation, it's players who ended the season as a Generation Adidas player. That's a little different than it had been in the past. Miles would be protected.
Okay.
Mo Adams would be protected as well. So you take both of them out of that equation. Homegrown players who were born in 1994 or later. So Will Trapp, for example, he's 26. He has to be protected by Columbus. But other homegrowns who are born in 94 or later, you don't have to protect.
So that's Carlton, that's Bello, that's
right.
Lagos, that's Goslin. That's
all of Atlanta's are automatically protected. You're good.
Right.
One thing that I don't think will get tricky for anybody, but it has in the past, you have to protect 3 international players. If you only have 3 international players, you have to protect 2 of them. If you only have 2 international players, you have to protect 1. But 3 is your minimum if you have more than 4, if you have 4 or more international players. And generally, you're going to do that automatically, like just because those are the players you need to protect.
Well,
but occasionally it can get
weird.
weird.
Joseph Pitti and Barco, you're absolutely protecting all 3.
You're set for Atlanta.
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, I think what it comes down to, and we could go through the list again, and I looked at Doug's predictions this morning, and I looked at Ben's article, and I think a couple people on Reddit have thrown out some predictions. And where it gets sticky for me is Brandon Vasquez, because Vasquez is the type of player that I think could be selected. And that would be one that, of all the people that Atlanta United could potentially expose, I would have a hard time with losing Brandon Vasquez. I think Vasquez, first of all, the way the team is constructed right now, and you don't know where they're going from here, but Vasquez is really the team's only true reserve backup striker to Joseph Martinez right now. So it would leave you now. You would have other options within your roster in a pinch, but I think that leaves you in a bad spot depth-wise if you lose Brandon Vasquez. And I think Vasquez has also shown that when called upon, he can be kind of a clutch player. Certainly was in the U.S. Open Cup, and he was in those matches in June and July when he was filling in for Joseph Martinez. So that's where it gets thorny for me when you get down to that level of the roster. How concerned are you about potentially losing Brandon Vasquez? And is Darren Eales going to do the same thing he did last year, where maybe he's on the phone with Paul McDonough, or he's on the phone with someone in Nashville saying, look, we'll offer you X, Y, and Z, X, Y, or Z in a trade, but please don't take any of our players. And that's something that he absolutely could do as he did last year.
You have to do it with both, though. Now, Chicago has done that. They've made trades with both, so I'm not expecting to see a Chicago player picked. And they're the only team that's in that situation right now. So you do have DC, Dallas, Houston, Red Bulls, Vancouver that are exempt because they lost somebody to Cincinnati. It's going to be tough, those last couple picks. And Tafka asked, and I mean, you're getting Doug has projected a protected list. Ben Bear's projected a protected list. You're going to have to make decisions about Jeff Larentowicz, who's a free agent. Are you going to protect him to keep his rights? Because if he's picked, the team that picks him is going to be able to negotiate with him, and you go to the back of the line. Remedi under contract. He's been listed as unprotected by some. He's under a deal, so you think about assets too. I think if Eric Remedi's on the open market, you could get more than $50,000 in GAM for him, and that's your return if you lose somebody in the expansion draft. Merrim, his contract situation's a question. Heineman is on loan. The ability for a team to pick him, they can pick him, but can they negotiate their own purchase option and or loan for him? That's a big question mark. And would you risk losing Tito Villalba in an expansion draft where you can get more than $50,000 in GAM for Tito Villalba?
Yeah, and that's the reason why I think you're protecting Tito. Larentowicz is interesting because he's 38 years old. That doesn't mean he can't be selected in an expansion draft, but I would imagine an expansion team might look at Jeff Larentowicz as someone that you could pick and then flip to another team for an asset. And by the way, am I correct, Jason? You know the rules better than I. Could Nashville pick Jeff Larentowicz and trade him back to Atlanta United?
Yes.
So
that's what Atlanta did with Clint Irwin in 2016.
Right. So that could be a method too, where okay, you really want to keep Jeff Larentowicz, we're going to take him because we couldn't work out a deal with you, but now you're going to have to send us some TAM or some GAM to get him back. That's something that could happen too.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy. I think the teams that have the most difficult decisions, Columbus, they're going to have a lot of players that I would be interested in picking that I think they're going to have to leave unprotected. I think the Galaxy have some interesting decisions. LAFC will have one or two. It could come down to Tristan Blackman or Lee Wynn being unprotected for them. Minnesota is probably going to have a very enticing player available. New England, I think there's going to be backup goalkeepers picked or a starter for Nashville potentially, because you just can't afford to protect more than one goalkeeper. I don't think any team can really do that. So whether it's Alec Can, whether it's Cody Cropper, whether it's Brad Knighton,
you bring
go
Pickens
further
forward?
down the list, Alex Bono. Sorry, go ahead, John.
Do you bring Pickens forward and keep him from your USL side?
You haven't yet, and he's also an older goalkeeper who lost his spot in MLS years ago. I don't know if you move forward with him when you have potentially Can, Bono, Cropper as guys who would be available. I would probably take any of them over Matt Pickens.
To your point about goalkeepers being taken in the expansion draft, LAFC 2 years ago, number one pick in the expansion draft, Tyler Miller.
Yep.
Now, Miami got that homegrown who they would expect to be signing from the University of California. I think he's your one or your two in Miami. But, yeah, like Tyler Miller was a young goalkeeper that hadn't had an opportunity. LAFC gave him that opportunity. Now, he might be on his way out of the league, and they're going to have to figure that out. But for Nashville, there's going to be young goalkeepers that we just haven't seen with an opportunity in MLS yet because they're behind an established starter that will be unprotected.
Does Toronto expose Bono?
Yeah, they have to because I think they're going to – now, Westberg, I think, is either out of contract or an option, but he talked about wanting to come back.
He I think he is out of contract, but he said he's negotiating with the club.
Yeah, and that would be really risky to leave him unprotected, even in that situation, because I'd snatch him up based off his performances. So
absolutely.
I think you have to protect him, and you have to leave Bono unprotected, and he would be the one I would jump on out of any of that group.
Me too. Yep. Bono in Nashville, that's someone you can you want to talk about starting the spine of your team. That's a really good base of your spine.
Yeah, definitely that. He's the guy that you can build around for years, and he's shown you big performances in the past. He hit a bad run of form. You would take the risk that he can find his form again.
Yeah. Going to be interesting.
Yep.
We'll see. I know it's a scary time for fans of all the clubs that are going to have unprotected players, but generally, this never works out in the worst case scenario that everyone fears. Very, very seldom does a team just get absolutely rated and have the worst case scenario play out to them in an expansion draft.
Yeah, you can only lose one. I mean, I think anybody can play it to their advantage and find a way to deal with this the way they want. But there are a few teams, and Atlanta could be one, that you're just going to have to leave some players unprotected and take your chances. But a lot of it is down to managing your roster in terms of assets, because you look at that return of $50,000 in game if you lose them in the expansion draft. There's guys that could get more that I think you protect, even if you're thinking about changes for the next roster, because you can get more in another way, whether it's a trade or what have you.
Now we're also hearing stuff out of LA that with Zlatan gone, it could be Edinson Cavani, Mike.
Saw that, yeah. Well, that would be just like the Galaxy, wouldn't it? I mean, the Galaxy will probably end up with like 7 designated players when this offseason is over, and then they'll try to figure it out.
Oh, but we only have 3. We only have 3.
Well,
there's a loan here.
That hasn't stopped them before, has it?
No.
Well, I mean, look, it does speak to the aspirations of LA Galaxy, and that's fine. I love it. I'm still a little fuzzy on Zlatan. Does he actually have a better offer outside of MLS? Is that proven? I'm not sure.
I think the Galaxy could have said, yeah, we're good.
And, you know what? Good for them if they did. Good for them if they did. It was pretty apparent that they had reached their ceiling with him. So if that's the way they went, good for him. And, for people who, neutrals and casuals who are, pointing to Zlatan as this indictment of the quality of the league, that Zlatan's leaving. It's not that at all. I think the league will be better in the long run without him.
I do too. All right. Well, I would say enjoy the game tonight, but enjoy the high school football tonight.
Well,
enjoy your red wine.
What's the high school game, John? That's the game I'll be enjoying. What are you doing tonight?
Camden County at Marietta, 2-3.
Okay. Well, oh boy, that's a long trip for Camden County. Ouch.
Yep. They brought 48 players up yesterday, and they stayed at a 4-H camp south of town.
Wow.
What?
Yeah.
What? The Camden County Booster Club can't get them in like a 2-star motel or something like that?
Well, but what you want in that situation, you want to keep an eye on everybody. You want to have the meals together in a large enough space and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, they brought up like 48 players yesterday. They stayed at Jason, you may know this. It's a little south of your hometown, Camp Fortson down at Hampton by the Speedway.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So they stayed there, and they're bringing everybody else up in the Yellow Hounds today, I believe. So it was a split maneuver, and I'm anticipating that the game is going to go all night long, and we'll be going by the time we come back on the air on Monday morning.
I'll tell you, there might be some juice boxes in play on Marietta because they'll have the home field advantage, the cold weather advantage, and the sleep in your own bed advantage. That's a tasty play.
Would it be the dressing or the stuffing that you're putting on it?
Oyster. Oh, yeah, 2 dishes of oyster dressing on Marietta tonight. That seems like very easy dressing.
Yeah, I'm generally going to bet against a team that's staying in a 4-H camp the night before.
Yeah, we are also talking about 16-year-old kids, so I want everyone to know that my tongue is firmly in cheek on all of this. Best of luck to both teams tonight. John, have a great call.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. We'll talk to you next week.
See you guys.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinsky of Apolinsky and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
Welcome back. November 15th edition of SDH. Make sure you got your calendar set for next Tuesday. We're going to be at Wild Heaven Brewing on the West End location. It'll be Mike, it'll be Kevin Egan, it'll be me talking about the 2019 season from our perspectives, the travel, being on the road, calling games, all the things that we do in that. We'll also talk about the expansion draft because it will have just concluded by the time we start. So come out and join us. Wild Heaven, West End, 7 o'clock, the drinks start flowing. 7:30, we'll start talking. We'll be taking questions from you guys throughout the night. It'll be a lot of fun. So come out and join us on Tuesday. Go ahead and put down December 4th as well on your calendar. We'll be at Reformation in Canton with our buddies from the Cherokee Soccer Association talking youth soccer, but also Atlanta United, also whatever is going on in the world. It'll be an SDH show on the road that evening, but we'll have some guests from the Cherokee Soccer Association and get into the youth side of the game a little bit deeper. It'll be a good time. So we're going to finish the week out with the buffet table of questions from you guys. Keep adding to it on Twitter at SoccerDownHere, and let's see what's up first.
Let's see. Well, a couple of news and notes that have come across the table. The Revs have signed DeJuan Jones. They've re-signed him to a deal. He'll be returning in 2020. And the Whitecaps, after an extensive global search by their own definition.
You mean Axel Schuster did not call them and they said we're just going to go ahead and hire him instead?
Apparently so.
Okay. Crazy how that happens.
Yes. Following an extensive global search, the Whitecaps have now named Axel Schuster as their sporting director from his over 2 decades of experience with Mainz and Schalke. So he is now going to be reporting to the team about that, reporting to ownership over all technical aspects of Whitecaps from youth to first team.
They needed to do this. It's good. It's a good move. It's a good hire. The CV, everything checks out. Makes a lot of sense. So seems good on the Vancouver side. And Vancouver social media, by the way, might have won yesterday with their tweet at Montreal asking if Thierry Henry would coach on turf.
Yes.
Because he didn't like to play on turf. So.
And good news from the United Soccer League. The championship final sold out in 96 minutes.
Yeah, no shock there with Lynn Stadium, University of Louisville hosting it. It's about 7,000 seats. Maybe you can squeeze in a little bit more. So demand big. Louisville City, big club in that market. They are going for another title, and you'd have to consider them the favorite in this one over the Real Monarchs. Douglas Martinez, one of the Monarchs' top players, suspended for kind of a wild fracas that happened at the end of the match with El Paso. I thought he should have been red carded. I was blown away that he wasn't. And the disciplinary committee made the difficult decision of suspending him with no red card, and he's going to miss the final.
All right, for the Twitters, going back to Ricky Ricardo and Atlanta United, he says, why do I get the sense nationally that everyone around the league is waiting for Atlanta to fall off? Like other teams are losing big pieces, and we know Atlanta will look different, but it appears that there is a sense of no way Atlanta can rebuild and be a successful team in 2020. We finesse the league every year with our front office, but that and 3 trophies apparently don't mean much. Hashtag they hate us because they ain't us.
I don't know. I don't get it. It has been fairly consistent from day one. It was interesting to me last year how all kinds of questions and talk, and Barco was a, less than average MLS winger and all the stuff that was said all season, and then everybody went nuts about the final and the atmosphere and how great everything was. And then it flipped again really quick where it is, well, everything's terrible, it's turgid, it's boring, it's all the different things that were said, and like, oh yeah, but they won 2 trophies somehow, but it was bad, and now it's going to get worse. I don't know. I got nothing. You just block out the noise and you just keep pushing and doing what you do if you're Atlanta United. This is a team that in 3 years has fielded 3 of the best teams MLS has ever seen overall in its history. To do that in your first 3 years out. Now, the LAFC's done that in their first 2. And they are, I think, going to get that same type of treatment here pretty quickly. And a lot of it's going to depend on what Miami does out of the gate. If Miami comes out all guns blazing as we expect them to, LAFC will go from being the darlings to then the questions are going to come up that I think are valid about LAFC? Can they win big games? Can they do it in big moments? Can they show a little bit more than just the great attacking soccer? Can they give you a little more of that defensive style? Can they defend? Can they hold a team out? You're going to get those questions coming to the fore. It always feels like there's a lot of playing favorites in the way that the league is talked about. And that's been the case for a long time, but maybe it's just because the overall group of people covering the game in this country is small, and it is somewhat insular. It feels like when one take starts to resonate, it just gets amplified, and the volume gets turned up on it, rather than differing takes coming to the fore. So right now, it's the take that Atlanta United is going to struggle next year. It was the take that Atlanta United was struggling all year this year. We'll see what happens. We'll see how it continues, but I have confidence in the front office putting together a good group to be competitive on all fronts next year.
Talk, I wanted to give a salute on a Friday in light of all the athletes in trouble news we get with other leagues. Can we all give a round of applause to at MLS for having a far, far, far better behaved collection of athletes?
I mean, you get bad actors in any sport, in any league, anywhere in the world. It happens. It's easy to jump on the ones when things are bad. I mean, I think you get in MLS a lot of players who do great things in their community, just like you do in any league. I mean, that's not to knock the NFL or baseball or basketball and hockey and the impact that you see those players have in their communities as well. There also aren't as many eyeballs on MLS, so sometimes some of the negative stories that you see dug up in other leagues just aren't being dug up in the same way in MLS. So it's not that they're better. I don't think you can really even compare that. Luckily, although there have been some incidents that have been in the ballpark, luckily you haven't seen a scenario like you saw last night with Myles Garrett ripping a helmet off and then swinging it and hitting the player with it. Yeah. Ricardo Clark's attack on Carlos Ruiz would be the closest thing to that we've seen in MLS, and that was shocking. It was nowhere near as bad, and Ruiz maybe didn't help his case by grabbing his head when he was kicked in the back, but anyway, that was really bad and shocking. We haven't seen as much of that type of stuff. Doesn't mean it won't happen, and doesn't mean that the league is all of a sudden a bad place if it does. It's just the nature of sports.
2 questions from Sean Vergara. He wants to know why Doug's posting cryptic Darren Eales tweets. What's the latest rumor?
I've not heard any of these rumors, and I have not seen these tweets. Is Doug trying to steal Darren's gimmick?
I don't know. But then Sean is also asking about Luka Modric to enter Miami.
It's a rumor out there in The Guardian. I don't know if I buy it. There's been a whole bunch of rumors about Miami, and at this point, I just don't know. I'm not seeing cryptic Doug tweets. The only thing I go back and see from 2 days ago, something about feeling a disturbance in the force, and I think it was 10 minutes before the Darlington Nagbe trade was officially announced.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
That's all that is.
Tim Trussell-Smith. No, I was right there with you. I thought he was just responding to the Nagbe release.
No, it was before it. No, it wasn't responding. It was before it. But, I think he knew that it was coming. That's all I'm
anticipating that the news was happening. That's what he said. Tim Trussell-Smith, like many, my Friday flashback game is the 2002 World Cup versus Germany. If only Oliver Kahn was an inch shorter. But how about the friendly versus France last summer? They fought in a freaking friendly, but tonight doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good call, that France game, because that's a recent. The Germany game, I think, is the best the U.S. has ever played. So, obviously that. I'm leaving that one out because I don't know if I can even envision the U.S. playing at that level right now, but I can envision the U.S. fighting like they did against France last year in the pre-World Cup friendly, and like they did against Argentina in 95, and like they did against Ireland in 92 in the U.S. Cup, in the rain at RFK, like they did against Algeria in 2010, like they did against Italy in 2006. I mean, they were the only team that kept Italy from winning a game in that World Cup, and that was a battle and a half where they finished with 9 players. So that's what I'm looking for tonight. I'm not even asking for the best of the best performances. I'm asking for a fight, because I think if you can do that, you can win this game, and you got to win this game.
To the coaching thoughts that we had this morning in and around Thierry Henry, Walt Baxley wanted to know, didn't Tata call Eels and Boca? Who else did we interview before Tata was hired?
There were a lot of interviews. If I remember from not going back to that, and let's be clear. This is not the same situation. This is not the same situation at all. Tata Martino was coming off of getting to 2 finals with Argentina in the Copa America. Yes, they lost in penalties in both, but they got to 2 finals. Yes, he was at 1 year at Barcelona, and they didn't win a trophy. They were also second by, I think, a point in La Liga, and they were involved in so many big games. It wasn't a disaster of a year at Barcelona. They won more games in a row than any manager had ever won to start their career at Barcelona. He won a lot more than 4 games in 20. So that comparison doesn't hold up, because yes, when a big-name manager calls, you're going to take the call and you're going to take the interview, and it might change the way you're thinking. Thierry Henry is not a big-name manager. I don't care what you base that on. He's not a big-name manager. He's a big name in the game. And I would take his call, and I would interview him. But, man, he better have had the most amazing PowerPoint presentation the world has ever seen to not interview anybody else. Atlanta United at that time, before Tata Martino reached out, I believe you were talking around that time to Jason Kreis, who had been out of a job since the end of the 2015 season in New York City. And he was coming. That's not the Jason Kreis today. This was the Jason Kreis that had went to 2 MLS Cup finals with Real Salt Lake, won 1, went to a CONCACAF Champions League final with RSL, and lost to Monterrey. This was a Jason Kreis that was seen as a future national team manager in 2016. Okay, so I'm pretty sure he was interviewed. I know he was the front runner, according to most. Adrian Heath was fired by Orlando before Tata Martino interviewed, was hired, etc. He would have probably gotten a call or an interview. I don't know if that happened or not. I wouldn't be shocked if it did. Siggy Schmid had also been let go very recently by Seattle, and had had a ton of success with Seattle, and he had won MLS Cups before. He was let go right before Nico Ladero was brought in 2016. I would assume he was interviewed. So you had a lot of MLS-level managers that were interviewed for a job that at that time would have been big names, and would have been names that would have definitely been considered and would not have been dismissed as a bad hire. Tata Martino was a different level of an idea that maybe wasn't considered at first, because one, he had a job until the end of the Copa America Centenario, and then when he walked away from Argentina was when he reached out. Don't know what the timeline between those two were, but their interviews took place, and there were lots of people in the mix, and those would have been the 3 that made sense that I remember.
Tim Trussell-Smith, he says he's less worried about the Henry hiring in Montreal. It's actually a growing trend in business to not just interview widely for appearance sake. Henry may have started the conversation, but would they have considered this big a name, even one without experience? Once they had a big-name candidate, they can still do the legwork necessary to see if he's a promising coach. Arsenal and Belgium thought he was. The fact the candidate reached out and they chose to focus on him isn't reason enough to worry.
Oh, no, it's reason enough to worry, in my opinion. This is just my opinion. I could end up being completely wrong in this, but Arsenal wasn't moved enough to hire him. He worked with their youth. Belgium, he worked under Roberto Martinez. He was an assistant. The stories that have come out at Monaco are the things that worry me. The press conference where he, I thought, completely out of line, embarrassed a young player for not pushing up his chair enough. I mean, he did push his chair in, but I guess it wasn't enough. And to make a big deal about that it felt petty. Like, it felt weird. And there was a lot of talk in the European media about Henry not separating himself from the group enough and being in charge. And that was something that was a problem at Monaco. When you're an assistant, that's a different situation with Belgium and also with a national team, as opposed to a club team and the day-to-day. But the move from assistant to being the number one, it's a big difference. He was going into a situation that was going to be difficult because Monaco had sold off a bunch of players. But he lost the locker room in 20 games. Like, not just was bad, not just failed to win games, but he lost the locker room. They asked for him to be fired in 20 games. That has to be concerning. For me, that's more concerning than being hired by Arsenal to work with youth and being hired by Belgium and Roberto Martinez to be an assistant. The fact that players asked for his firing in 20 games is very concerning. You have to learn from that, and that could make him a better manager in this situation. It absolutely could. But if the things that were out there about him not being the guy in charge and being one of the boys, and then you take into just long-time conversations about Thierry Henry, and we saw it when he played in MLS. There were times where it was nowhere near Zlatan Ibrahimovic level arrogance, but it did come out from time to time. That's going to be an interesting dynamic and interesting stew that you're going to have in Montreal now with a manager who doesn't have much experience and has had a very bad experience in losing a locker room, who will now be going into a locker room of players who have struggled lately and are not at the level he is accustomed to working with. Where is his patience going to be? He's had a lot of great managers, and you would hope that Arsene Wenger, Pep Guardiola, and others have rubbed off on him. And he's able to, maybe in Montreal, not being in Ligue 1, not being at Monaco, a club that he started at, and being able to just work. Maybe that will help him, and maybe that will be everything he needs. I hope, because he can be a big thing for this league, that it works out. But to be concerned about it, I think those concerns are incredibly valid, and people pushing them to the side, I have to disagree with.
One more thought before we get into the rest of the notes that you have, and I know we wanted to get into the women's soccer discussion as well. Chandler Creel looked at Ben Bayer's list and thought that not protecting Eric Remedi was extremely confusing. Any ideas? He wanted us to hypothesize as to why.
Well, Ben Bayer's looking at it from the outside and not watching the team day in and day out, and you see Eric Remedi not feature at the end of the season, and I think it's a valid conclusion to get to. I do think it's incorrect, because when you look at the protected list that Bayer posted, Barco, Joseph, Pitti, obvious, no question. Brad Gazan, agree. Julian Gressel, LGP, agree. Even, yes, the options and long-term deals you got to deal with, you're not going to risk losing them in an expansion draft. Franco Escobar, agree. This is where it gets tricky, because Bayer has Heinemann, Merrim, Pereira, Pogba protected. The ones that I look at that I would be worried about not protecting would be Remedi, Vasquez, Villalba. Those are the three that jump out to me that, okay, you're going to need to protect them in my book. Because Remedi, you have under contract. He has shown his value. And I also think, going back to the big picture standpoint, you can get more than $50,000 in GAM for him. And he would be one of your more valuable assets because he's on a manageable contract. So I would protect Remedi. Vasquez, his youth, right now, he is your backup forward. His upside is still good. I think we forget how young he is. Vasquez is a player I would protect as well. And Villalba's a no-brainer to protect for me because you can get things for him. Even if you have made the decision, or he has made the decision, he doesn't want to be here, and you've made the decision that you can afford to lose him, you're not going to put him out there for $50,000 in GAM. You can get a lot more than that in the league or outside of the league for him. Reportedly, Justin Merrim is out of contract, and he's on a big number, too, if there is an option on him. So I think you could risk that one. I think you can risk it on Pereira because you didn't put out a lot of money for him. He didn't play a whole lot late. I don't know what the market is for him. I think there's more appealing players on the list if you do expose Pereira. Pogba is a tricky one, and Heineman's an even trickier one because of the loan. I would take the risk on Heineman, and going through Bears' lists, I think at times he opted to do that and have a player listed as unprotected that was available that was here on a loan, with the mindset that, all right, if the club that picks him, there's no guarantee that they would actually be able to get the loan, the purchase option, because Heineman's loan is up. Uriel Antuna, for example, with the LA Galaxy, I wouldn't protect him because he's on loan from Manchester City, and the conversation out there right now is that Chivas wants him. So I'm not going to waste a protected spot on him because I don't know if he would be picked. I'd do the same with Heineman because there's no guarantee that Bournemouth would do a deal on Heineman with Miami or with Nashville. Now, once that protected list comes out, then Inter Miami's on the clock, essentially. They have the number 1 pick. If they want to make a deal, they could be talking to Bournemouth and say, well, this is who we're going to pick. We want to do a deal. Can we do it? Changes the narrative. Pogba is on an option, and Pogba would be, you would assume, at $300,000 plus, which was his salary this year. Is he going to be a starter for you next year? If he is, then I think you pick up the option, you move forward with him, and you protect him. If he's not, or if there's a question about that, Remedi, Vasquez, Villalba, I think are more critical to protect. So you're gonna come down to one difficult decision, and whether it's Merrim, Pereira, Pogba, Heineman, Remedi, Vasquez, Villalba, you're gonna have to come down to keeping one or leaving one unprotected, and it's gonna be difficult. And there's other teams that have that boat as well. There are gonna be some good players out there available because teams just can't protect everybody.
That's it on the timeline having to do with expansion, Atlanta United, and all the local stuff. I know that there were some other things that you wanted to hit before we go.
Yeah, it's just stuff on our list. It's not critical. We've talked about a lot of it. The Luka Modric rumors are out there from The Guardian about Inter Miami being interested in bringing him in. Real Madrid are thought to be open to that, but not before the summer, and that's where Miami's getting into a little bit more at this point. If they're going to make a splash, I don't think they're going to have him from day one. I think they're going to get him in the summertime. It is what it is. I'm just surprised they haven't made a bigger splash yet. Christian Jack of TSN is reporting that Donnell Henry, who could be factoring in for Canada tonight against the U.S., will be sold to a top Asian club, an Asian Champions League club. He had a big season this year for a bad Vancouver team. I think he flew under the radar for a lot of people. But that could be a move that brings Vancouver some nice assets in return. And it's another good sign of players being developed in MLS and moving on. Miami has acquired a center back, Grant Lillard, from the Chicago Fire. They had to give up $75,000 in GAM for him. I think that is the move that protects any Fire players in the expansion draft, because McCarty to Nashville, Lillard to Miami, probably both of those deals had a expansion draft protection handshake on them. So I'm not expecting to see Chicago lose anybody in the expansion draft. If you missed it in USL Championship news, Landon Donovan will be the new manager of San Diego Loyal. He's also the VP of soccer operations, so I guess he hired himself. I don't know how many interviews he did. Maybe he didn't feel like
Did he call himself?
Maybe he sent himself a text and said, I am interested, and did the interview with himself and then hired himself. Maybe that's the way it went down. We'll see. I'm very, very intrigued because Landon has given some interviews, and I've liked what he's had to say about how he sees the game from a tactical perspective and how he's just, I think his philosophy about the way the game's played. I want to see it play out. I want to see what he can turn into. So, USL Championship for his first managerial experience, good fit. Eric Winalda will be back with the Las Vegas Lights. That was announced yesterday. Also announced by USL, League 2, there will be a new team in the Metro Atlanta area, Southern Soccer Academy, best known as SSA. They will have a team in League 2. They're going to play at East Paulding High School in Dallas, Georgia in 2020. They're going to move to the Marietta area in 2021. And we're going to hopefully check in with SSA here in the next couple weeks and have a 1v1 about how that team will go for them, because I love the idea of a youth team adding essentially a U23 component at the top end of it. And I hope to see more youth clubs go through that process, because I think it can be really valuable for them and just further those connections with their players who, move on and play in college, but they can bring them back to wear the SSA shirt in the summer in League 2. And it gives you, I think, a competitive advantage with other youth clubs, because you can also play your top 16, 17, 18-year-olds in League 2 in the summer and get even more experience and more of a challenge for them. So I love the idea. It's a great move by SSA, and I'll be curious to see how it does in terms of attendance and, more importantly for them, how it does in growing the club. The U23s for the U.S. lost to Brazil yesterday, 1-0. It was a pretty bland match, to be honest. The U.S. didn't have a ton of chances. Brazil hit the post a few times. It's a bad goal to give up. It didn't really show you a lot. Jason Christ talked about it afterwards, about the we need to come into this game with a lot braver mentality to play through them, to defend higher, to put pressure on players earlier. From a learning point of view, we gave Brazil too much respect, too much time and space in the first half, allowed Brazil to completely dominate the possession and tempo. He's right. That's exactly how it looked. It looked very vanilla. I believe the defensive pressure was described as creamy on Twitter, which was a really good adjective to use, because that's what it looked like. I wish I thought of that. 17s, Mexico reached the World Cup final. It was a great goal by the Galaxy's Efrain Alvarez on a free kick, and then he ruined everything nearly with a horrible Panenka attempt on the first kick of the shootout. Horrible. Like, the Panenka is wonderful when you get the goalkeeper to dive. When the goalkeeper stands there and just catches the ball, so bad. But Mexico bounced back, and they won the penalty shootout, and they go to the final against Brazil on Sunday. So one U17 team in the region is advancing in the tournament, and one went home in the first round. And again, that just deepens the conversation about where U.S. soccer is right now.
Sam Kerr to Chelsea happened as well.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a shock. It had been talked about during the summer, and Chelsea spends the money to do it. We knew she was leaving NWSL, so no surprise there. The Women's Super League is going to continue to spend more and more money, and they're seeing these games get more attention now, and it's still a process, but the women's game in England has captured the general attention of the public. So now that clubs feel like there's money to be made, they're going to spend money on players like Sam Kerr. It's exciting. It opens up a lot of possibilities for female professional players around the world. And U.S. players, I think, will be part of that conversation. If I'm a top club in Europe, I'm going to be offering a lot of money for Rose Lavelle, because that's a player that I would like to get in my system for a few years and build around. And you can market and sell those shirts and sell all the merchandise around it. Rose Lavelle, an exciting player. He would be one that I think would absolutely be a target. John Nason asked about George Campbell being listed on Ben Bear's list. He shouldn't be, because he's not under contract yet. It doesn't matter because he's protected on Ben Bear's protected list. He's a homegrown, so it doesn't really matter. But no, he's not under contract yet, so he shouldn't even be an option. There was a question for New England about Alexander Butner, who is not under contract yet technically either, and you don't have to protect him because of that.
And the question that came along with the Sam Kerr thought yesterday was, what could the NWSL do to try to keep players like Sam Kerr here playing domestically?
Spend more money. There is no rocket science to this. Pay more money. And they opened up the way the salary structure is structured, and we talked about that before. They had to. And it's probably too late to keep Kerr, but it's going to help keep other players have allocation money now in the NWSL. It's that simple. It's honestly that simple. Pay them more money, and you'll have a better chance of them staying.
So your plans tonight are going to the brew house to watch the match in front of 9,412 TVs?
Yes, I'm just going to be watching one of the TVs. But yes, I will be watching at the brew house and hopefully not partaking in Daniel Price's drinking game attached to this. Hopefully it doesn't get that bad. Yeah, I'm going to be watching because it's important to me to know how this team responds to a very poor performance in Toronto, giving up a second goal late that just adds to the misery. They have to show something here. Berhalter has to show something with how the team comes out because that is on him. The players have to show something. The ones that get picked to start this game have to show you why they got picked. You have to see a response. This team has to look a little nasty. This team has to be physical. They have to put pressure on Canada. They have to make life difficult for Canada. If Canada is able to breathe and grow into this game, it's going to be a long night for the U.S. If the first 15 minutes looks like American players have been shot out of a cannon, then the U.S. will win this game. But you're going to learn a lot about mentality in the first, we'll say 30 minutes. We'll give it 30. If the U.S. are the more intense team in the first 30, they'll end up winning the game. If they can maintain that. If Canada comes out and is the more intense team early, the U.S. is not going to be able to match that later. They're going to have to be that way from the start. So that's what it comes down to for me, and it's important to understand where this program is because there's a lot of eyeballs on it right now. There's a lot of people with the knives out. There's a lot of people that are ready to pounce on a poor performance tonight, and it's down to Greg Berhalter to show that that's not the case, and it's down for him to show that there's flexibility in his system, and it's down to these players to show that this matters. So we'll see at the end of 90 minutes, and we'll see if the U.S. has a shot to go to the Nations League semifinals next year. They need those competitive games, and I hope they get them.
Anything going on for the weekend for us in any manner, way, shape, or form? Are you going to be anywhere, or are you just going to take it easy?
We'll have 1v1s coming up, correct?
True. Yes. Ryan Kelly, the president of Asheville City. That'll be coming out this weekend. And also later today, we have an event in Richmond at noon, the press conference that is announcing the new sporting director and head coach, Darren Sawatsky. We will catch up with him later this afternoon, and that will be available on the network as well later on this weekend.
Interesting. Keep an eye on different things around the league. I think you will get more talk about potential trades around MLS. You'll get a lot of talk when these protected lists come out, and that'll be 10 a.m. tomorrow. Keep an eye on this report from Grant Wall in Sports Illustrated with the USL potentially starting a women's professional league that they think they can get D1 sanctioning, and they think they can get the same type of support from U.S. Soccer. That has to get worked out here. I don't know what's going on because U.S. Soccer helped launch NWSL, has provided players for it, has provided funding for it. If USL feels like they can get that from U.S. Soccer, and U.S. Soccer would split their support, I don't know what's going on between NWSL, between U.S. Soccer, and now USL's in the mix. If you get two leagues competing, it is not going to be good for the women's game at all. And I don't know. I mean, you have USL owners who are in the NWSL now. You have North Carolina Courage. You have Louisville coming. I don't know what's going on. I think there's going to be a lot of talk the rest of the day after this bombshell was dropped this morning. So once the dust settles a little bit, we will have another Women's Soccer Weekly for you about this. We were going to do one after the friendlies last week, but then things started bubbling up. You had the Louisville stuff. It's like you wanted to gather it all at one time, and then you feel like you're about ready, and then this happens. So early next week, we'll kind of decipher all of this, because I'm blown away by this report and what this could look like. And if you wonder why Atlanta hasn't jumped into women's professional soccer yet, these are the reasons why. Because it's not stable yet. And now if you have another league in the mix, it's just going to get chaotic. So we'll wait and see what happens, and we'll talk about it next week. We'll have the 1v1s coming up. Ryan Kelly will be a great one. Asheville City has been a fun story. Starting out in NPSL, now they're joining USL League 2. What that ride has been like for them. The moves in Richmond. We're going to have a lot of stuff over the weekend. Maybe a reaction to the match tonight if it deserves one, which could be good or bad depending on how it goes.
A hot drop one way or the other, huh?
Yeah, it could be either way. So stay tuned. Thanks, everybody, for the week. Thanks, everybody, for chiming in. Thanks, everybody, for buying stuff on our Teespring store. Go check that out over at teespring.com. Thanks for everybody for buying scarves. If you still want one, please let us know. Send us a message. They're $20, $5 for shipping if you can't join us. Monday night we'll be at the Brew House. Tuesday night we'll be at Wild Heaven West End. All the SDH stuff in the off season will be continuing. Thanks for being part of it. Much platiel.
Much platiel.